Okay, welcome friends. In this one, we're going to build and run our first simple web page that's interactive and connected to our database. All right, we'll do this in about 15 minutes. It's pretty cool, fast, but quite powerful. Now remember this one bit. In our table here, we had this field called money earned, and it was of data type money. So just keep that in mind, okay? All right, so here, type 2017, we're going to open up Visual Studio 2017. Do keep in mind this process is pretty much the same in the previous version and even in 2013. Doesn't change very much. So click Visual Studio 2017. We're going to launch that. Looks good. Right, we need the correct project type. There are many different project types. So the easiest one is File, and then go over to New, and then Website. So Shift-Alt-10 as a key combination. So make a new website project. Make sure under the templates here on the left side, you have Visual C with the little hash mark. We read that as Visual C Sharp. The hash mark is read as sharp, that is. And then select the first project up, ASP.NET empty website, to keep it as simple as possible. Down below, for the web location, you have options. Store it locally. For our purposes, that's fine. That means the file system on your hard drive. You could, for example, put it directly on a web server. You could upload it to a web server using FTP. But again, file system is fine. And that next bit, that's the directory where it's going to go, the path. You can change that if you like. Just click Browse and then navigate to some other folder. All right, after that, click OK. If you've been using Windows, obviously this is not overwhelmingly unfamiliar. It's pretty familiar, I think. Standard kind of navigation. All right, and that looks like this when it comes up. You should see something like this, roughly. Now, on the right side, I'm going to close that for a second. You should have the Solution Explorer. That's usually visible by default. If you don't see the Solution Explorer, go to View and then Solution Explorer. Control-Alt-L as a key combination. Okay? And this is some basic files. Let's go through the structure a little bit. First of all, you've got the solution. That contains everything. Then within that, you have a website project. And that's a collapsible item. That means it contains additional item. Usually when it's collapsible, that means it's like the parent. And within it are additional folders, files, and so on. So notice we have, first of all, something called web.config. So I'm going to click on that. And this is the website configuration file. So web.config. And here is still store various configuration settings. For our purposes, what you really have to know is that if you change some code here, the website might not work. That's all. So for our purposes, we leave it in its basic form. We don't have to modify it. All right. Now, we need to add an actual web page that we can run. We don't have one just yet. The website configuration file is just that, a configuration file. So right-click the name of the website, and then go to Add, and then go over to Web Form. And select that. You can leave the name as default, that's fine. Click OK. Okay. And this gives us some basic markup. Now, some of this is specific to Microsoft, like this stuff up top. That's specific to Microsoft. So for example, you see where it says language equals and then C#. So we could add C# to power this page, to make it more interactive and dynamic. The code file, that means this here is the HTML, what the browser ultimately receives. But the file where the C#, for example, is created would be stored right here, default.aspx and then .cs for C#. That's the code behind file, as it's called. And there's something highly specific called inherit. We don't have to worry about it here. Okay, let's review a bit of the HTML. So remember, HTML is a markup language, and it usually involves tags. So HTML opening and closing tags. Right, you've got the head section, and again, that's broken down into an opening and a closing head tag. They come as a pair for good structure. All right, the same thing with the title, opening and closing. The title is where, for example, you can type something like my first database connected page. And before we do anything else, let's just give this a run. To make sure that it works efficiently, do this. Go to build, and then build the solution. Compile all of the files. This is not a class specifically on ASP.NET. That's a very vast topic, and the newer versions like MVC and so on. So for our purposes, just make sure you build it. Control-Shift-B as a key combo, if you like those. And make sure that on the bottom in the output panel, you receive a message similar to the one you see here, where it says 1 succeeded. All right, and now let's give this a run in Chrome before we do anything else. So hit Google Chrome or whatever browser is showing for you. I think that depends on what you have set as your default browser on your system. All right, give it a second here. The first time you do this, it's a bit like cranking up an old car, you know. All right. And it can be a bit slow. All right, but there it goes. And again, it's not showing anything. It shouldn't be, but it does have some details I want to review here. So first, notice that my first database connected page is showing in a tab here. So the title that we typed becomes what you see over here. For example, if you save your page in your favorites, it's going to show you that. If you mark it, if you bookmark it. Take a look at this other business. This is localhost. That means your computer that you are using, colon, and then 53066. That 53066 is the logical software port where the browser went to reach the page. And then default.aspx, you've got the name of the page with the extension on the page. And if you right click and you go to view page source, this here, I'm going to enlarge this. I'll make it nice and big. This is what the browser receives. Again, we're not going to go over this in great detail, but as you can see, there's a lot of basic HTML here with the head, the title, the body. But there are also some bits highly specific to Microsoft, like for example, this bit right here. See this? Where it says that. View state generator. Again, that's highly specific. So keep in mind that what the browser receives ultimately is HTML. Some of it is very standard HTML, and some of it is highly specific to Microsoft. All right, let me close this. Close this. All right. And at the next stage here, click to design view. So left click on the bottom, it says design. And now let's design stuff as follows. Make sure on the left side you've got a toolbox showing. If you don't, you go to view and then toolbox. Control Alt X as a key combo if you need to. Control Alt X shows you the toolbox. All right, left press on grid view, drag, and then release. And that adds our first control. The control can be configured to connect to a database, and all the queries that we have written can be used to retrieve information from a table and the server and then show it on a web page. Let's do that next. So under grid view tasks, click right there, make sure you click right there. Choose data source and then a new data source. We have to configure the connection to SQL Server. Here there are 6 options. In previous versions, you may have fewer or more depending on the specifics of your computer, but you should still see SQL database and then click OK. All right, next stage, click New Connection. And here is where you connect to your server. So under server name, click that drop down. When it looks for servers, that can take a bit of time. All right. And on my computer, sometimes the screen blacks out in the background for some reason. Oh, what are you going to do? So you've got the name of your computer, that's the server name. Then you're going to put a slash, and then you're going to specify, for example, SQL Express. Okay? The name of the SQL instance on your machine, SQL Express. And then down below, expand the drop down where it says select or enter a database name, and then choose my DBase. And for Windows authentication, remember at the beginning of the course I said make sure you use Windows authentication when you install SQL Server to keep it as easy as possible. If you didn't, then now here, you might have to use SQL Server authentication. You got to remember your username and password to log in. All right, but I'm going with the simple Windows authentication. You can test the connection if you like on the bottom left-hand side. Hit test connection, and then click OK. All right, give it a second and expand where it says connection string. Let's take a look. So you've got the data source. It's the name of your computer / name of your SQL server. Initial catalog simply means the initial database. Integrated security means that you are basically using Windows login. That's it. Click next. You can leave the connection called my DBase connection string. You can change it if you like. Click next. Now, here, you see where it says columns and it's got a star. That's it. You can choose your columns here first of all. And it says on the bottom, select star from table _1. All right, click where. So first we're going to just grab some of the records. So choose the column you want to filter by. Imagine it's money earned. Down below you can choose the operator. Let's go through these. This is the equals operator. This is the less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. This next one we read as not equal to. The next one says is null. That means value is missing. And the last one is not null. That means doesn't matter what the value is, it's just not null. There's some value there. Whereas the is null checks, is it missing? So the two have a different purpose. All right, so for our purposes, let's say we choose less than or equal to. For the source, choose none. If you wanted to, there are additional sources of the values that could be used to query the server. Common one is the control. That means it's like a little text box where you enter a value in your web page, and then you can send that to the server and it can get information for you. There are additional ones, cookie, form, profile, and so on. They're more sophisticated. For us, just go with none. And you see where it says parameter properties? So look very carefully. It says here money earned less than or equal to, and then it's got the @ symbol, and then money _ earned. That's our parameter. Parameters are basically like placeholders, and you can stick different values through them into your query. Okay, so I'm going to type, for example, 100,000 over here, and then click add. So notice that it says on the bottom, money earned less than or equal to, @money earned. So money earned here with the @ is the parameter, and the first value we'll assume will be 100,000. Remember, it's a variable quantity. You can change it. Click OK. And that's modified nicely, as we've seen down below. Okay. Let's also sort the data. So hit order by. And you can sort by different columns. So expand that. And let's go by money earned. We're filtering on money earned, and we are sorting on money earned. Choose descending. And if you look at that query or select statement being built down below, it looks very similar. The only difference is that you have this @money earned, which remember is the parameter, and you specify different values. Through that, they go into the query, so it can go into the server and get the information that you want. Click OK. And then click next. You can test the query, so hit test. And this is the window that comes up next. Now, remember at the very beginning of this lesson, we talked about the fact that the money earned in SQL, in the database server, was of type money. But here, notice it's been shown as a decimal. You see that? And the initial value we're sticking in is 100,000. I'm going to click OK. And does it work? Yes, it does. You see, it gives you this result right there. Mary, HTML developer. And she's been chosen because she makes less than 70,000. You can hit test query again, and you can change the value over here. So maybe this time say 200,000, like that. And then click OK. And now it's chosen all of these people. All right, so I hope you understand that this money earned is the parameter. The value is right there. And the parameter is required because through it, you pass values into the query so you can get specific results from the database. Click OK. And then click Finish. That's good for our purposes. And the only thing I want to add here is enable sorting. So enable sorting. And that's it. We can run this. We'll take a look at some of the code in a second. For now, just hit Google Chrome. And give it a launch here. And again, the first time you do this, it might be a bit slow. But in our particular case, it's good. It's working as expected. Remember that at first we input, right? Less than 100,000. That's why it's showing only this one. And click that off. That's good. Go into source view here. Switch into source view. And this is all of the code that thankfully is automatically generated. We don't have to worry about it. We should still understand it somewhat though. So first of all, take a look. You see where it says ASP bound field data field ID? Bound field simply means that this field here in the grid view is bound to a database field named ID, just like we have it in SQL Server. The header text is the text displayed in the page. That you may want to make kind of pretty. So I'm going to say here ID like that. You can change that. Okay. Next, we have the next bound field here, and that's just connected to the name field in the database. Then we have the title connected to the title in the database. Next one is the money earned, and that's connected to the money earned field in the database. So these here fields are simply fields connected to the database. That's it. All right, and if you wanted to, theoretically, you could remove one of them. Nothing will be wrong. Like you can remove the title field. Okay. Next, and notice that this is within the columns. You see that? All right. And then you end the grid view. So this is a pretty structured kind of construct. You have the opening tag, then you have the closing tag, just the same as in HTML. Same thing with the columns, opening, closing. Now down below, we have the SQL data source. And again, I know it looks kind of messy and there's a lot happening here. Let's separate it out a little bit so it looks a little more neat. We can focus on what we want here, which is the query right there. We can modify this code, just as I've shown you just now. And it says select star from table 1. Usual, nothing new. This is our logical condition where. And the only thing that looks a bit different here is you've got this symbol right here. See this LT with the ampersand? So that would stand for less than. Then you've got the name of the parameter at money earned. And remember, that's needed because through it, values go into the database. Then you've got the order by clause. That's it. All right, and lastly, we have this thing that says select parameters. And so now here, you can set the default values, like say, for example, 200,000. See? All right, and now let's give this a run, this modified version of things. Remember, I modified the default value of the parameter named money earned. Okay? Hit Google Chrome. Give it a second here. Beautiful. We've got a nice database connected page, minimal programming. Very good. And because we enabled sorting, to take a look, if I click on money earned, right now it's from highest down to lowest. I can change that. I can click money earned and it's going to sort it differently. You see? If I click on title, it's going to sort by title. If I click on name, it's going to sort by name. Nice, huh? And if I click on ID, it's going to sort by ID. Nice. All right, let me close this. There you go, friends. I'm going to leave it here. I know this video is kind of long, but you have learned quite a few different and interesting things, I think. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.